So we are going to review all the rules for adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing with integers, decimals, and fractions. The title itself is overwhelming, so stay with me. And luckily, you have this amazing handy-dandy chart that you have been given, so you're going to know what to do and where. So we're going to go through that. The other thing that will be helpful is get out your yellow packet. Okay? Because your yellow packet has a lot of information on it, hopefully. If not, then you can add to it today. So you can add to those notes on that yellow packet. Okay, so here we go. On the front of your packet, it has whole numbers, fractions, and decimals. It has subtraction and addition. So we're going to go through problems for each one of these and see what's happening. So when we subtract, we don't like subtraction. We're going to change. Remember, this is your subtraction is your high maintenance friend. Remember your high maintenance friend, you have to do it the way they want it and in the order they want it, and they're really picky. Addition is your friend. They can just hang out with no big deal. So subtraction we have to be picky about. Now, if you were in Mrs. Phipps' class, you would have learned that we want to cross the line and change the sign. So when it came to subtraction, we always cross the line and change the sign. Now the way this teacher explains it is we're going to keep change, which is great also. So let's take a problem. We have -8 minus -5. And again, we put that in parentheses so it's clear what is actually happening. So the way this teacher explained it is that you keep change. Okay, so let's look at what they did. -8. Subtraction changes to addition, and this changes to its opposite. So it'd be a +5. Now, if you were in Phipps' class, we would have taken this problem and would have gone across the line, change the sign. Now look at this. Does that mean the same thing? Yes, it does. And once we do that, we have addition. Yay! We get to hang out with our friend. That is very easy and to get along with. So then we have -8 plus 5. So look down here at -8 and +5. Oops. -8 plus 5. Are my signs the same or different? Okay. So I have an option of same signs or different signs. Okay. So this one is going to be that I have different signs. So bring that problem all the way down here. -8 plus 5. So when my signs are different, okay, I subtract and I take the sign of the higher number or the larger number or the larger absolute value is what I really need to say. Absolute value. Okay, so I'm going to subtract. 8 minus 5 is 3. And then which one is bigger? So this is where I cover up the signs and I say which one's bigger, 8 or 5? Well, 8's bigger, so I'm going to take the sign of the 8. It's going to be negative. Okay, so see how it's kind of a little flow chart is what you do. So now let's take another one of subtraction, and let's say that I have -10 minus 6. What is that equal to? So again, I'm going to keep change, or I'm going to cross the line and change the sign. So now I have -10 plus -6. Are my signs the same? Yes, they are. If my signs are the same, I add, and the sign stays the same. So add, and the sign stays the same. So add, 10 plus 6 is 16, and my sign stays the same. Okay? So what you can do when you get to your homework today is go, hey, I'm going to flow through. If it's, I look to see, is it subtraction? I'm going to follow this. If it's addition, I'm going to follow these steps. Okay, so it just kind of goes through it with you. If we have more time, we'll come back and do some more, and I'll just throw those in. So let's see where we're at. So now we have fractions. Okay, still the same thing with fractions. If I have -3/4 minus 1/8, okay, I'm going to keep change. So for those of you who learned it that way, we're going to do this. Again, we also can do cross the line and change the sign. Cross the line and change the sign. Okay, so if I cross the line and change the sign, my signs are the same. So I come down here to where it says signs are the same. So I go negative 3/4 plus negative 1/8. Now, this is super important right here, okay? Must have a common denominator. Must have a common denominator. Must have a common denominator. So if I want to get a common denominator, remember the tricks we talked about. Always look to see, does the smaller go into the bigger? Can I take 4 and times something and get 8? If so, 8's going to be your common denominator. Okay, could I have multiplied these two together? 4 times 8 is 32. Yes. 4 and 8 both go into 24, so you have lots of common denominators. You have to just choose one. I'm going to choose 8 because it's the lowest one. So I rewrite it down here. What do I do to 8 to get 8? Nothing. Just bring it along. What do I do to 4 to get 8? What do I do to 4 to get 8? Well, I multiply by 2. So guess what? I have to multiply by 2 up here. So negative 3 times 2 is a negative 6. Now, the beautiful thing with fractions is the denominator just comes right on over. Don't change it at all. And then I go to my rules for addition. Negative 6 plus a negative 1, my signs are the same, so I add, and my sign stays the same, so I get a negative 7/8. Okay, good. Different signs. Oh, let's throw in on different signs down here. I have a negative 1 and 1/5 plus 3/10. Now, I want to point out something right here. Cross the line and change the sign. If I don't have a line to cross, I can't cross the line, so therefore I can't change the sign. So look down here. This is already crossed. I have a plus sign. I can't cross it. I can't do anything but add. So I have to find my rules for addition. But this one is cool because look at this right here. Look at this right here. Okay? We have a mixed number. We always have to change our mixed numbers to improper fractions if we're going to add when we have different signs. So that's the first thing I'm going to have to do. I'm going to have to change that to an improper fraction. And I do it by taking the whole number times the denominator. 1 times 5 is 5, plus 1, I get negative 6/5. Now we're not done because must have a common denominator. So I've got to get a common denominator. Now look at that. What would you use for a common denominator? Yeah, a lot of you notice that I can take 5 into 10. So my common denominator would be 10. Awesome. What do I do to 5? What do I do to 5 to get 10? I multiply by 2. So I'm going to take 2 times negative 6 and get a negative 12. What do I do to 10 to get 10? Nothing. So just bring that 3 down. Now my signs are different. So when my signs are different, what do? I subtract and I take the sign of the larger. So I'm going to subtract. 3 from 12 would be 9. And remember, my denominator just comes right on over. My signs were different, so I'm going to take the sign of the larger. Which one's bigger? 12 or 3? 12. So I take the sign of the 12, so I get a negative 10. Negative 9/10. Sorry about that. Okay, decimals. Here we go. So I have negative 3.1 minus 10.25. Okay? I'm going to cross the line and change the sign. For those of you who do keep change, it's going to make negative 3.1. Subtraction goes to addition. Whatever follows it goes to its opposite. So I'm going to change that to be a negative 10.25. Okay? And then we're going to add. Now, of course, for adding, we always have two options. If my signs are the same, I'm going to add, and the sign stays the same. So I'm going to come right down here, and I'm going to actually add 3.1 and 10.25. I'm a person that likes to have it not be top heavy, so I always put the ones with the most digits. Now it doesn't matter. You can have it like this, or I like to put the bigger one on top. So I would write it like this. I'm going to add either way. Okay, and notice we have to line up the decimal. Line up that decimal. See, decimal point, decimal point, decimal point. Doesn't matter which way you write it, I have to still line them up. Okay, so line up the decimal point. Whoops, I can't color inside the lines, can I? So line up the decimal point. Okay, now I'm just going to add 5 plus 0 is 5. 2 plus 1 is 3. 0 plus 3 is 3, and bring the 1 down. So I get 13.35. But wait, look at my signs up here. They're both negatives. So what's my answer going to be? It's going to be a negative 13.35. So always go back to your original problem and check what your signs are. Let's do one of those where the signs are different. So I'm going to just give you a problem. 8.3 plus negative 7.2. Now look, once again, I don't have a line to cross, so I can't cross a line. I don't change my signs. Okay? Oh, that all rhymed. So now I'm going to, my signs are different, so what do? I subtract. So look at this one. I have to now take the larger absolute value. Okay? So cover up the signs. What's bigger, 8.3 or 7.2? 8.3. So I have to put that one up top. 8.3 minus 7.2. We'll come back and get the signs later. Let's just subtract. So we're going to subtract here. 3 minus 2 is 1. I have to bring down the decimal point, and I have to lay them all lined up. 8 minus 7 is 1. Okay? So my answer is 1.1. Look back at the original problem. Okay? Which is bigger, the 8.3 or the 7.2? 8.3, so I take the sign of the 8.3, which is positive. So there is my answer. Okay? Make sure you have all those notes. If you need to, pause the video and get them. Now, before we leave adding and subtracting and go to multiplying and dividing, one of the things that we talked about in here was we talked about difference. Okay? To find the difference of something, we're going to subtract. Okay, so that means we're going to subtract. Now we found out, and maybe the hard way, but on that quiz, but if I want to find the distance, I'm going to subtract, and I want to subtract in the order that is given. So if I want to find the difference, I'm going to subtract, and I want to do it in the order given. Okay, so if it says that it was at 5 feet above ground and 4 feet below, I'm going to take those numbers just as they're written. And when we get to the homework, we'll look at that some more. Now, the other thing we talked about on that was distance. And remember, distance, if I want to find the distance, this is just a number. It's not going to be a positive or negative. And remember that if we take the absolute value of the difference, so if I take the absolute value of whatever I got from the difference, I'm going to have the distance. Okay, so keep that in mind too. We take the number, ignore the sign. So we just want the number. There's no positive or negative distance. There's just the number. We'll get back to that when we get to the homework. Okay, let's go to multiplication. Now remember, multiplication is your friend, division is your high maintenance friend. So we're going to have to be very careful when it comes to that division. But yay, multiplication, we just get to go. So here we go. If I am multiplying, and we've talked about this many times. So the way we talked about it in Phipps class is that we said, if odd number of negatives, answer is negative. Okay? And if even number of negatives, answer if there's an even number of negatives, then the answer is positive. Okay? So, this is another way you can talk about it. And so, if my signs are the same, if I have a positive times a positive, I get a positive. If I have a negative times a negative, I get a positive. If my signs are the same. Okay? I really have to be careful about this because it makes me think of addition. And so that's the reason I like to count how many negatives and positives. So here, if my signs are different, and again, that gets really confusing. So get that from your yellow notes, okay? Okay, so let's look at a couple. If I have negative 10 times negative 3, I have two negatives. I have an even number of negatives, so my answer is positive, okay? Negative 6 and negative 8. And if you don't know some of these, use your multiplication chart. We're going to let you have that, so not a problem. 6 times 8 is 48. No problem there. I have two negatives. So what's my answer? Positive, exactly. Okay? So that one's going to be a positive. If I have 3 times 9, 3 times 9 is 27. How many negatives do I have? 1. So that means I have an odd number. It's going to be a negative. Also, we talked about that the negatives will match up and knock each other out and becomes positive. Negatives match up, becomes positive. I have a lone negative there, so that lone negative stays. Okay? So, now, fractions. In multiplication is just the easiest one there is. So let's say I have 2/3 times 3/4. I multiply the numerators. I just multiply those all the way across. Just they go and I multiply. 2 times 3 gives me 6. So I multiply the numerators. I multiply the denominators. 3 times 4 is 12. Okay, so I get 12. Now, remember, your answer always needs to be in lowest terms. We're going to come back. I know some of you are going, wait, we can do that another way. Just hold on. I'll be back. Let's just finish it the surefire method way. I multiply the numerators, multiply the denominators. But I have to make sure my answer is in lowest terms. What are these both divisible by? Some of you might have said 2. Some of you might have said 3. Some of you might have said 6. And guess what? You're all right. You are all right. So you just have to pick one, start reducing. So I'm going to pick 3 just to be obnoxious. So if I divide both of them by 3, I'm going to get 2 over 4. Is that in lowest terms? And you say no, because those can both be divided by 2. Or I could have divided by 6. No matter what, I'm going to get 1/2. I'm going to get 1/2 by the time I'm all done. Okay, so let's look at that exact same problem again and do it what I think is the more fun way. Okay, so look at this. See how I have 3's? Remember, as long as one is on the top and one is on the bottom, I can simplify. It doesn't matter where they're at. One on the top, one on the bottom. So I can reduce by dividing by 3, dividing by 3. And look, I can do this one too. Divide by 2, divide by 2. So I get for a final answer 1 times 1, 1 times 2, and I have that same answer that I had up here. Okay? And I have to make sure, always check at the end to make sure your answer is in lowest terms. When we multiply decimals, multiply as normal. Count number of digits in the problem, count back that number in the answer. So we have to have the same number of places in the problem and in the answer, but we're going to just multiply like normal. So let's take negative 9.2 times 4.5. Hey, is my answer going to be positive or negative? Yeah, keep that in mind. We'll come back to that. So what I do is I multiply by like normal. I'm going to take So I'm going to take the digits 9 and 2 and 4 and 5, and I'm going to multiply. I'm going to put those decimal points back in later on, but I'm going to just multiply. I'm going to keep in mind I have 2 decimal places. So in my answer, I have to have 2 decimal places. So let's multiply now. Okay, 2 times 5 is 10, carry the 1. 9 times 5 is 45, plus 1 is 46. Okay, put the 0 down here. Now I'm going to take 40, so that's the reason I have to put a 0. 4 times 2 is 8. 4 times 9 is 36. And I'm going to add 0, 6, and 8. 14, carry the 1. 4 plus 6 is 10, plus 1 is 11. And I get 4. Now, how many decimal places did I have in the problem? 2. So I have to have 2 in the answer. So my answer is 41.4. Now, you can put just 41.4 or 41.40. Okay, doesn't matter. Now look at the original problem. I had a negative times a positive. What's my answer? That's right, negative. Okay, so just watch the decimal places. However many there are on the problem, that has to be that many in the answer. Okay, let's go to division. Not as easy, okay, a lot of times. Couple things we want to remember is the fraction bar bar means division. So if I have negative 20 divided by 2, okay, did you hear how I read that? That's negative 20 divided by 2. So I'm going to divide. I'm going to take 20 divided by 2. That gives me 10. How many negatives do I have? An odd number. I have an odd number, so that means I'm going to have negative for an answer. Okay? Compare that to if I had negative 20 over negative 2. I'm still doing division, still get 10, but now I have two negatives. I have an even number of negatives, so therefore my answer is positive. Okay? So I remember that division is also indicated by a fraction. So just to keep that in mind. Okay, now if we're going to do fractions, I have negative 2/3 divided by negative 5/9. Okay, so I'm going to keep, change, flip. So keep, change division to multiplication, and flip it. Okay, do you see that? See how we change that? Okay, now I can just multiply my numerators and get 18, because I had a negative times a negative is positive. 3 times 5 is 15. Reduce that to lowest terms, dividing both of them by a 3, and I get 6 over 5. Okay, or you can do what I think is more fun. See how that 3 and 9 are on different levels? So I can divide by a 3 here, divide by 3 here. Don't forget about that negative. Negative 2 times negative 3 is 6. 1 times 5 is 5. I get the same answer either way I do it. Okay? So you can reduce first or reduce later, but just make sure that answer's in lowest terms when you're all done. And now everyone's biggest high maintenance friend is division of decimals. Oh my gosh. Make sure the second number is a whole number is what we need to keep in mind. So here we go. Negative 0.91 divided by negative 0.5. Okay? So negative 0.91 divided by 0.5. So what this says here is really important. Make sure the second number is always a whole number. So right here has to be a whole number. You're going to have to make it a whole number. So that means I'm going to have to move the decimal point 1 decimal place. If I move this one decimal place, I also have to move this 1 decimal place. So what I'm going to actually be dividing is 5 divided into 9.1. Okay? Now another thing that's really important is wherever my decimal point is, it has to go directly above it also. So here you go. 5 goes into 9. How many times does 5 go into 9? Once, that's right. I'm going to subtract 9 minus 5, which is 4. Bring down the 1. How many times does 5 go into 41? 8. Now, if you don't know that, look on your multiplication chart, go across at 5, and find the thing that's closest to 41. And you're going to find that's going to be 40. Okay, now we're not done. We subtract, we get a 1. And you're going, I have no more numbers. Too bad. Put it in there. Okay, so I'm going to put a 0 in. 5 goes into 10. How many times? 2. Now let's check and make sure we have the right sign on this. I have 2 negatives up here, even number of negatives. So my answer is positive. So that is my answer, 1.82. Okay, good. So you get an idea. This does not cover everything. Look back at your notes. Look back at your yellow packet too, because that will go through what you need to do. So let's look at your homework for today. The first thing I want you, so hold on to this paper. We're going to come back to it. Don't let that go far. It says show all your work, no calculator. Remember the test we're going to be taking next week has no calculator. This is enter answers in Edulastic. Yay, we don't have to do that. Okay, we're not going to do that one. So we have thrown everything at you. Everything is here. So that's the first thing you're going to have to do is have to be able to identify, what am I doing? What am I doing? And then once you figure out, oh, I'm subtracting, go through your rules for subtracting, depending on what it is. If I'm multiplying, go through your rules. Okay, so take this handy dandy chart out and go, or better yet, just leave it right beside you on your desk. See right here? So that I can just look over and see what to do. Okay, so for instance, what am I going to do here? I'm going to multiply, because whenever I have things right next to each other, that means multiplication. Right here I have addition. Can I cross the line? Nope. So I'm just going to add. What does this mean? That's right, that's division. That bar right there means division. Okay? Up, have addition. I can't cross the line. Oh, look. Cross the line, change the sign. Okay? Or rewrite it as an addition problem. Okay, so 16 plus 3. So just be very aware. What do I have? And then, What do I have here? I have subtraction. Go back to what I know about subtraction. Use this handy dandy little chart, and you'll notice I unstapled mine. Feel free to do that same thing. It might be easier if you unstaple it, so then you don't have to flip back and forth. You can just look at it. Okay, let's look on the back. Oh, yay, you have more. Woohoo! Then, on this one, find the distance and the difference between each elevation. Remember, when finding the difference, order matters. So look at this. 30 below, 40 above. Don't change the order. Just come right over here. Take them right over here. 30 below, negative 30. 45 above. But I'm finding a difference. I have to subtract. Subtract, subtract, subtract. 45 above. Okay? Then go through and do that. When you're done with that, to find the distance, I want the absolute value of whatever you put here. That's going to be it. Now, you have to write out what it's equal to. Take the absolute value of the difference. That's a number. Remember, distance is always just going to be the number. It's going to be the absolute value. It has no signs. No signs on distance. And then 28 through 30, just for fun, it wants you to say true or false. Okay? Putting just a T or an F is a little too confusing. I want the words true and false written out so we can actually tell what those are. So go through and here's what I would recommend. Do the problem first and then see what they're saying. Okay, good. So this is what we want you working on, and this will help a lot as you prepare for the test. So keep this sheet and be using that as you're doing your homework today and maybe even on Monday. We're going to be practicing some more of these. So you can do this, work on this entire worksheet. If you get finished with that, the teacher will tell you what you need to do next. Thank you very much.